Hi everyone, this is James O'Brien. I was a PhD in, what is your PhD in?
PhD is in theoretical and computational physics.
Right, stuff I know nothing about, which is why I like him. I met James back in the fall at the first faculty meeting and fell instantly in love with him and another guy, Bob Gruber, who's also here. And we've been having lunch pretty much every Wednesday to talk about issues, and it kind of evolved into play. So I wanted James to come and talk about the idea of play in physics. His specialty is quantum physics, but more especially, if that's the word, is cosmological issues, right? Something like that?
That's right.
Okay, so what exactly, or how exactly does play fit into your realm?
Yeah, so this is a good question, and I apologize that I'm not there in person. I really wanted to be, but the many body problem kind of gets in the way of certain things. So play was something you never think about play as a scientist or as a physicist. And in fact, you know, if you were to go to a physics conference and say, hey, let's play with something, people would typically probably look at you like you had 5 heads.
Yeah.
The concept became interesting to me because my wife is an elementary school art teacher.
Right.
And
an artist.
And an artist. And so some of the things that they're struggling with nowadays is really, you know, you have a K through 5 curriculum. You have all these learning outcomes which are set by the state and set by the federal government. And how do you assess those? And one of the big things, though, is that especially in art, you know, yes, you got to teach color theory, and yes, you got to teach some other stuff, but you really
it's
want...
It's the but that matters.
It's the but.
Right.
You really want your students to come and play with the art. It's the whole question of can you teach creativity, right, is what it boils down to. And the thing that she got really stuck on is that there's not enough room for play, both in her artistic education, but in just lower education as a whole, which she feels is very stifling.
That's also in higher education too with that.
And so that's, at first I thought, you know, okay, well she might have a point, you know, you should play when you're a child, this and that, but then the rigid physicist in me said, well, you know, we have to learn the laws of nature, this and that, and I started thinking then more and more about my 15 years of teaching.
Yeah.
And thinking, well, if I had to put my finger on what is the problem in elementary physics classes at the college level, so your physics 1, your physics 2, is that there's a real trend, and all the data shows this, there's a real trend nowadays that students will try something once, and if they don't get an answer, it's complete cataclysmic shutdown. They think that they don't understand the material, they think that they can't do it, right? You always heard this mantra of, well, I'm just not a math or I'm not a science person. And it's really not that. It's that students don't realize that you have to play with the concepts. And if you don't play with the concepts, you're never going to get any further. So that's how I related to the teaching, and then it really went wild in my brain. Go ahead.
I'm looking at your poster up here. Education is not the learning of many facts, but the training of the mind to think. Albert Einstein.
That's right.
It's just what you're saying, right?
That's right. Exactly. And this was not a prop, by the way, for this interview. This is here. I mean, Einstein is full of these quotes. So, you know, the one about imagination is more important than knowledge, that sort of thing. Yeah. And so I realized that I was really onto something here, or just where my thought process was going was take it outside of the context of the introductory level courses. Look at the entire phenomenology of physics as a whole, right? If you look at physics, it goes in these cycles where every couple of 100 years, people really start playing with ideas. They say, well, maybe Aristotle was wrong, and then you get Newton. Right. And then maybe Newton was wrong, and you get Einstein. Right. And then maybe Einstein was wrong.
And
exactly. Yeah. And without that play, without you being able to question or challenge the rules, you know, and then we can talk about that, about how that fits us into a game. Humans don't progress anywhere. But when you stick to the rules, you're stuck.
It takes some sort of breaking of the mold before, which is what Kuhn was saying about the movement of sciences.
That's right.
Forward, that something has to be out of whack for the question. You're like, well, what the hell now? How do we reconcile this? How do we redo this?
Well, because let's say that you and I are in the lab and we have some machine, right? And it's a black box. We don't know what the machine does, right? But we know what it can measure, right? We don't know how it measures it, but we know what it can measure. And it spits out a result. And let's say we were expecting a result of 5. And it spits out a result of 75,000.
Like, what?
Right? And so first we power it off and power it back on, right? We toggle all the cords. But we have to make some claim about this 75,000, whereas we thought it was 5,000. We're really only left with 3 choices, right? One is that our machine is bad, but let's assume it's the best machine in the world, right? option two is that, well, we can try to fit that 75,000 into one of the theories that is currently out there, right? So we're now playing within the current rules, right? Now we might have to tweak a little bit of rules to get there, right? But we're trying to fit it into the rules of our game, right? Instead of playing basketball with a basketball, we're now throwing a hockey puck around, right? And can we make the same game work? Or we have to slightly tweak the rules and reinvent a new game, right? We're still playing the game of physics.
But something feels it has to feel out of whack for us to move forward.
That's
and
right.
that's where the play comes in.
That's exactly right.
In the play in the world of these physicists.
That's right.
Yeah. And in the play in the world of physics entirety.
That's right.
You're also talking about your work with dark matter too, aren't you?
That's right. And so what Rick is referencing is that my actual field is exactly about this. Is that I am one of the about 4% of the physics population who tries to say, can we explain the cosmological observations that we see without putting in artificial matter such as dark matter and dark energy? Because a lot of people believe that dark energy and dark matter, this stuff exists, but not only does it exist, we've already figured everything out about it. And if you really know the science, that's actually not so true. Right. And so if we're going back to those three options that I said a second ago, I'm someone who trusts the observations, I trust the data, but I don't think that the game we're playing is necessarily the right one. So dark matter and dark energy, back to that analogy, they try to put the current, that stuff is the explainer, or that stuff is the stuff you use to fit it into the current game. Yeah. So that's the hockey puck in the basketball game. Right. I'm saying that maybe we need some new hybrid of hockey and basketball. We need to expand our rules.
Yeah, which is what kids do when they're in a field with nothing, no rules to. They're in a field with some kind of ball or an acorn or whatever, and they're making it up as they go along.
That's right.
Until it doesn't work anymore, and then make up something else.
The audience is probably much more familiar with this than I am, but I mean, there's all sorts of studies that show this, right? You can build a brand new playground, right? And people go on the swings, they go on the zip line, this and that. But within 30 minutes, they figure out their own way of using the apparatus.
Well, I had exactly that experience, which I'm sure I've talked about a million times, but I think you've heard. But I taught a class, 30 years ago, confusion, chaos, and creativity. Some chaos theory, some ideas about confusion, and how it works together with creativity. We brought 8 or 10 kids over to this bajillion-dollar new playground where I lived, and and they did everything the way supposed to, like the monkey bars and down the chute, and that lasted about 10 minutes. Then it was on top of the monkey bars and climbing up the chute, and that lasted about 15 minutes. Then some kid says, "Hey, let's go over there." It was a field with nothing.
That's right, absolutely. Yep.
And then they played for another half hour, making up games, and laughing and yelling at each other.
Had way more fun over there.
Oh my God, yeah.
That's right.
And they owned it.
That's right.
They had to create it, which is what you guys are doing in your field.
See, but I don't want to say us guys, and I don't think it's anything special about me. I wish there was more of that. Like, so using that analogy, right? If you think of physics as like this playground, this landscape, it's funny how many people will just use the monkey bars for the monkey bars, who will just use the slide for the slide, right? It's very rare that you, and this is kind of funny to think about, it's very rare that you see the proverbial physicist climbing up the slide instead of going down the slide.
But the rarity is a special case. It's the guys and women, I don't mean to be sexist here, the people who are making like leaps of faith almost, like I'm letting go of this to grab that one, but I haven't gotten there yet. I might fall.
That's right.
But I'm not going in that direction anymore. Something like that.
So that's the other key too, right? Is that yes, there might be people who come along like myself who decides I'm going to run up the slide or something like that, and I think that's a step in the right direction, but you have to then be ready to fall, right? That's the key. Is that nobody might ever hear of my name ever in the history of physics, because I might be totally wrong. This is the equivalent of me falling down, and I'm okay with that. But I think it's better to try and take that risk of getting hurt. But you need to have that element of playfulness there.
Yeah, and you probably will get whacked around the head, and you have been.
Oh my gosh, repeatedly.
Like, stupid person, we're not going to take your.
That's right. I've been called every name under the sun.
Right. Which happens. Oh gosh, that happens with anybody who's challenging the usual order of things.
That's right.
Okay. Hey, just switch around a little bit for like cosmological and quantum issues.
Yeah.
Okay. How's play enter that kind of stuff?
Oh my gosh. So do you want in the modern context or when it was first developed?
Let's go both.
So when it was first developed, I mean, and again, for those of you in the audience, the history of science is riddled with play, right? All the big jumps are come from play. So here's the perfect example. The quantum world is the perfect example, right? if you really trace the history, and I'll leave out some of the finer points, you really trace the history, you had some results that you can't explain.
Right.
And you had some rules, and those rules worked pretty good, right? Those were the standard rules, and they were a combination of Newton, a little bit of Einstein now, a little bit of Coulomb, and all, and Bohr mostly. It just didn't work. And then you have this, and so one of the big things that Einstein did, he's mostly known for relativity, right? One of the big things is this thing called the photoelectric effect, right? Which says that light doesn't just behave like a wave, it doesn't just spread out, it also behaves like a single particle.
The wave and particle issue.
The wave-particle duality. Great. It's what he eventually won the Nobel Prize for, because it was people had an easier time understanding that than relativity. Okay. And some guy comes along, this guy by the name of Louis de Broglie. Typically, his name is left out of the big picture names, right? He comes along and he says, well, if light has a wave-particle duality, why doesn't matter have a wave-particle duality? Now think about this, right? This is just him playing with the words, playing with the context, and you think to yourself, well, what in the world would that even mean if matter was a wave? It's complete nonsense, and so most of the physicists said, nope, let's throw it out, okay? But some physicists said, well, let's keep playing with this idea, right? And this was the people like Schrödinger and Heisenberg. And as it turns out, if you play with that idea, you get that, okay, matter can behave like a wave, but not only can it behave like a wave, but when you let it do that, when you play with it in that context, you literally get all the answers that Bohr was seeking, and all the errors that Bohr was encountering, they all go away with the simple thing of treating matter like a wave. But it's someone that starts saying, I want to go to the open field and run with it. And you have some people on the sideline say, well, let that crazy guy go. But some people go and play with him, and when they come back with the best game they've ever
Like they've been to new land.
That's right.
I see the world differently. Literally, in this case, seeing the world differently.
Absolutely. And to this day, the world of quantum mechanics, I mean, obviously there's been many leaps and bounds since that, but the world of quantum mechanics is the most precise science that humans have ever done. And it all started with literally that sort of crazy idea. Imagine if we didn't have the audacity to play with that.
We wouldn't have a cell phone that keeps going off.
That's right. And so in cosmology, I think that it's a very playful thing, right? I mean, think about it. Humans, right? You know, if I have a good run, right? You know, I'm going to get what 75 to 80 good years, and the rest, right? Some the infant years, and then the other side, right? So in that 70 to 75 good years, right? So I'm now 38, so I'm halfway there, right? And so, you know, how much more, you know, even with me being the most productive I can be proud of that at the end of my life. But what is the more interesting thing that me as a human, and not just me, but plenty of others that came before me, we had the audacity to say that we in that 70 years can talk about things like the Big Bang that occurred 13.8 billion years ago, give or take, and we can say with some certainty that we know what happened in the universe up to 3 minutes before the Big Bang. To me, that is the ultimate kind of play.
Just the look on your face, there was a startled look like, you kidding me?
Exactly. I mean, because think about the playfulness there. If people didn't dare to think that we can even learn about this, right, it would be stifled from the beginning, right? And this is one for Bob in particular, right? I mean, the whole idea of philosophy, right, is that you're trying to answer these big questions, right? Well, it's the same thing that physics is doing, right? But you have to be comfortable with saying, maybe we can actually answer these, so we can take a good shot. And if you allow for that play, you can get really far. And I think that's what modern cosmology has done.
Yeah, and there's also, like at the quantum level and the cosmological level, and I think even at this mundane sort of level, the idea of chance really matters.
That's
like the shit happens kind of bumper sticker.
It does, yeah.
And you don't know until after the fact that, but like the whole notion of the impossibility that this stuff exists at all.
Yeah.
Right? Where do we go with that? Okay. Period, end of sentence, start a new sentence.
Sure.
Okay, so there's some kind of view of the universe exists as a function of me being in it.
Yeah.
Kind of an observer-dependent universe. That somehow or other makes sense to me a lot, given my field psychology.
Sure.
Yeah. But also with that notion of play, that it doesn't really take hold and become substance until somebody has mucked around with it.
Until you engage it.
Engage it, right.
That's right.
I think it's much easier to say these.
Yeah, no, but I get it completely, right? I mean, so if you take one quantum interpretation, and this is a little bit of a generalization of it, right? But if you take one explanation of the quantum world of physics, right, is that the wave function or the state of being of any given system, whether it's one particle, two particles, etc. The state of being is not determined until you observe it.
Yeah.
Right? So the observer takes an active role
Right.
in the outcome.
Right.
I always view this the same way that you're saying, right? That in order to be or to exist, right, you have to have some sort of engagement with
Right.
the world around you. And
Yeah.
so this does provide, in some ways, this is a nice link between if we believe the world of quantum to be true, and we know that this collapse of the wave function does happen, this almost serves as, maybe it's not the be-all, end-all, but this seems to be an inroad for the idea of psychology entering into
Oh, God,
physics.
and that's why it started off. I mean, I hate Carl Jung, I can't stand him. Ugh. But his conversation with Pauly,
Yeah.
same sort of thing back years ago. But psychology really lost, I wrote an article about this, lost the mojo when it fell in with the Newtonian physics. Because everything that happened in the 1890s and the next decade or so was like going crazy on the other side of the aisle. We're going like, no, we want to be a real science. So everything was cause and effect in this stupid, ridiculous, dumbass deterministic world that didn't really allow for a person to kind of, engage it somehow. And it's like it's taken forever to get back to where it should be if it was for science, moving on with the unknown in a sense.
Well, it's an interesting trap, actually, right? I mean, because if you think about what physicists try to do, right, even in the quantum world where there is some randomness and there's some probabilistic nature, we still love determinism, right? We do. Where we want to say, you give me the parameters of the system and I'll
tell you how it works.
I'll make a determination.
Yeah.
But within that context, right, physicists are never actually satisfied with the pure determinism, in the sense that any good physicist, once they prove something, right, they get the result they're looking for, they're on to the next thing.
Right. You don't prove it, you already know.
That's right. So they keep going.
Right.
And so I think that's the catch. And maybe this is an interesting poll to do, right? If we surveyed, let's pick, I don't know, some number, like the top 100 physicists. And I guarantee you if we asked them, are you a playful person, they'd likely say no. But then I bet you if we gerrymandered and gave them this kind of conversation, then they would say yes.
Yeah.
I think it would be a real interesting
Because play, we're kind of near the end of the conversation, but play really has this really bad connotation.
It's a negative connotation.
Right, it's frivolous.
Yes.
It doesn't matter. And then when you're really thinking about something and you don't know anything about it, accepting all possibilities, that's playful. That has to be playful.
That's right. And I think that's probably a perfect segue for opening up to the audience for questions. And I think that it really does have a negative connotation, and I don't know why. Right? It's one of these things that
It's seen as juvenile.
It's seen as juvenile, but there's that part of it that is so important that it's not unique to science. It's not unique to psychology, and it's definitely not unique to philosophy. That when you have that ability to think about things, and you have that ability to rearrange a new system in your head and run with it and have some fun with it, right?
Right.
Think about it. The only way that anybody in this room has ever gotten through a PhD was that you had to love what you did, right? Because otherwise it was miserable.
You stopped.
Right? It was been totally terrible, right? So the only way you got through is that you loved it, right? And so love sometimes is not enough to keep going, right? You have to love it, but you also have to enjoy it. Right? It's the difference between love and enjoy it. You can love something but hate it, right? But loving and enjoying it, well, what do you enjoy most? You enjoy the idea of fun. You enjoy the idea of getting something out of something, and that's play.
I don't know exactly the order of who's going first here, but I will have spoken about, or will speak about, my definition of play.
Not determined yet.
Not determined.
This is a quantum. Right now, it's a quantum system, ladies and gentlemen.
But to me, and it's been for years, the idea of definition, which is so hard to define play, because it's like what Potter Stewart said about pornography, Chief Justice of the Supreme Court said, I know it when I see it.
That's right. Yep.
But I think there is a definition of play, which is essentially this: it's the posing of questions that are not necessarily verbal, and it has two functions. The first thing, it inhibits, which seems crazy because, like, you think of a question is open, but it inhibits. It says, I'm playing with this, not that. So there's a limitation, but within that, there's infinity here, there's infinity, there's all infinity across the board. But within that infinite limit that you put on, limit of the infinite, there's still infinite stuff in here. And it's kind of a diving in with the next question, which again inhibits, but enhances the pop.
That's right.
So play would be the question, posing of a question, not necessarily verbal, that both inhibits and enhances new movement.
That's right.
And I see it with little kids in the playground. I see it with your world, my world.
I think maybe that's a starting ground for having other people being welcoming and accepting of the idea, right?
Right.
Is because with a negative connotation, maybe it's in the definition that people struggle with it, right?
Yeah.
And let's face it, right? When people are moving through a career, whether it's in academia or something else, right? The last thing sometimes you want to be viewed as is juvenile, right? You want to be taken seriously, this and that.
Right.
So there has to live a definition that enables that, and maybe
Right.
it's something like that,
So-
because I like the idea of being it both inhibits but expands, right?
Yeah.
That's got to be the key, right?
Right.
Is that, like you said, and mathematically speaking too, right? In some seemingly finite set, depending on the elements of that set, you still have infinite possibilities
Exactly.
in there.
There's as much infinity in this room as there is in the universe.
That's correct.
Which is a hard notion to get around, but once you got it, it's fun as hell.
That's right. That's a play. That's what science, psychology,
Right.
philosophy.
Yeah.
I mean, these endeavors, right? You know, even if this conversation doesn't go anywhere, such as an academic journal, right? The conversation is still bringing three people
Right.
of different disciplines
Right.
together, but we're tapping into something that we all see
Yeah,
in common.
the through line, yeah.
That's right.
Thank you, my friend.
Thank you.
This is wonderful.
Appreciate it.
Okay. See ya.
Thank you.